Samantha had always believed in hard work. She was the type of employee who arrived early, stayed late, and never hesitated to lend a hand when her co-workers needed help. For 5 years, she poured her energy into her job at a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. She loved the work, and she believed her dedication would eventually pay off. Her manager, Mr. Reed, had been hinting for months that a promotion was coming soon. Samantha knew she had earned it. Her campaigns had consistently brought in big clients, and she had become the go-to person for solving problems when others couldn't. This promotion wasn't just a step up in her career, it was recognition for years of sacrifice, missed holidays, and long nights. But there was one problem. Her co-worker, Lindsay. Lindsay was charming, the kind of person who knew how to play the office politics game. She wasn't the hardest worker, but she was the loudest when it came to taking credit. Samantha had noticed Lindsay borrowing her ideas in meetings, rephrasing them just enough to make it sound like her own. At first, Samantha ignored it. She thought, if I just keep working hard, people will see the truth. But as the weeks went on, Lindsay's behavior escalated. She started snooping around Samantha's desk, glancing at her notes. Once, Samantha even caught her taking photos of a draft campaign she was working on. When confronted, Lindsay just laughed it off, saying, "Oh, don't be so serious. We're all a team here." Samantha had a sinking feeling. One morning, the entire office was called into a meeting. Mr. Reed announced that the firm had landed a huge client, one of the biggest contracts in the company's history. The client had been impressed by a particular pitch deck, a bold, fresh idea that would set their brand apart. As he clicked through the slides on the projector, Samantha froze. It was her work. Every detail, every visual, every word. She had spent weeks perfecting that pitch. And yet, there was Lindsay, sitting at the conference table with a smug smile, accepting praise like she had created it. "Fantastic work, Lindsay," Mr. Reed said. "This is exactly the kind of innovation we need." The office applauded. Samantha's hands shook under the table. She wanted to scream, to call Lindsay out right there, but she knew how it would look: jealous, bitter, unprofessional. And so, she stayed silent. The promotion was announced a week later. It went to Lindsay. For days, Samantha was crushed. She came home every night and vented to her roommate, replaying the injustice over and over. "I did everything right," she whispered through tears, "and she just stole it." But Samantha wasn't the type to wallow forever. If Lindsay wanted to play dirty, Samantha would let her because she believed in something stronger than revenge. Karma. Still, karma sometimes needs a little nudge. Samantha began quietly documenting everything. She kept copies of her drafts, emails with timestamps, and even screenshots showing when files had been created. She didn't know how or when, but she knew this evidence would matter one day. And then, it happened. 3 months into her shiny new promotion, Lindsay was asked to present a brand new campaign for another high-profile client. This time, she couldn't rely on Samantha's work because Samantha had stopped sharing. No more notes left on her desk. No more open drafts in the office. Samantha had locked everything down. On the day of the presentation, the conference room was packed. The client, a wealthy CEO with little patience for nonsense, sat at the head of the table. Mr. Reed gave Lindsay the floor. She smiled confidently, clicked to the first slide, and froze. The deck was a mess. Half-finished ideas, sloppy visuals, buzzwords strung together without meaning. She stumbled through the slides, her voice cracking, her face turning red. The CEO frowned deeper with each passing minute. Finally, he cut her off. "This is insulting. Did you even prepare?" The room went silent. Lindsay stammered. "Well, I thought." "No, you didn't think. This is amateur work. If this is the best your company can do, maybe we need to reconsider this partnership." Mr. Reed's face turned pale. He immediately jumped in, apologizing profusely and promising to fix the mistake. But the damage was done. The client left furious, and within hours, news had spread across the office. For weeks, whispers followed Lindsay down the halls. The Golden Girl had failed. And then came the final blow. During the fallout, Mr. Reed began reviewing old files to figure out what had gone wrong. That's when he noticed something strange. Metadata on the big client's pitch, the one that had landed Lindsay her promotion. The creation date matched Samantha's computer. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. Samantha had the receipts. She hadn't needed to say a word. Her quiet documentation spoke louder than any accusation. Lindsay was fired. Samantha, on the other hand, was finally recognized for the brilliant work she had done. The promotion was offered to her, with an apology from Mr. Reed for not seeing it sooner. That night, Samantha walked home with a lightness she hadn't felt in months. She hadn't needed to stoop to Lindsay's level. She had trusted her instincts, trusted the truth, and in the end, karma had done its work. Samantha's story is proof of something we all forget sometimes. People can lie, cheat, and manipulate their way to the top, but it never lasts. Eventually, karma catches up, and when it does, it's sweeter than any revenge. The wedding disaster. For as long as she could remember, Emily had dreamed of her wedding day. She wasn't obsessed with fairy tales or picture-perfect Pinterest boards, but she wanted one thing: a celebration of love surrounded by the people who mattered most. And when Ryan proposed after 5 years together, she was over the moon. Emily dove into planning with excitement, and by her side every step of the way was her best friend, Claire. They'd been inseparable since high school, the kind of friends who finished each other's sentences and knew every embarrassing secret. Claire had been there through Emily's worst heartbreaks and happiest milestones. So, naturally, Emily asked her to be maid of honor. At first, it felt perfect. Claire accompanied Emily to dress fittings, cake tastings, and venue visits. She seemed genuinely excited. But as the months went on, Emily noticed something odd. Claire's enthusiasm felt performative. She made comments like, "If it were my wedding, I'd choose a dress more flattering." Or, "Don't you think this color scheme is kind of boring?" Emily brushed it off. Planning stress can make people say things they don't mean, right? But then came the bachelorette party. Instead of celebrating Emily, Claire made herself the star of the night. She wore a white sequin dress, almost bridal, while Emily, the actual bride-to-be, wore a simple sash and tiara. Throughout the evening, Claire kept shouting, "Don't I look like a bride tonight?" and soaking up attention from strangers. Emily laughed it off, but deep down, something unsettled her. The wedding day arrived. The venue was glowing with soft lights. Flowers filled the air with fragrance, and Emily looked breathtaking in her gown. Her heart pounded with joy as she prepared to walk down the aisle. But just as the music swelled, she heard a commotion at the back of the church. Heads turned. It was Claire. She had arrived late in a full-length white gown. Not ivory, not cream, but blinding snow-white silk that shimmered under the chandeliers. Guests gasped. Whispers rippled through the pews. Emily froze. Her hands trembled as she clutched her bouquet. This can't be real. Claire strutted down the aisle, smiling like she owned the place, then slipped into the front row as though nothing was wrong. Emily's mother looked horrified. Ryan's face darkened. The ceremony continued, but the damage was done. Instead of focusing on Emily and Ryan, everyone whispered about Claire. Afterward, during photos, Claire kept pushing herself toward the center, striking poses as if she were the bride. Emily held back tears. Her once-in-a-lifetime moment was being stolen. The reception wasn't any better. During the toast, Claire stood up uninvited. She clinked her glass and launched into a speech that started sweet but quickly turned sour. "Ryan," she said, smiling too brightly, "I never told you this, but Emily wasn't always sure about you. Remember that time she thought she could do better? I told her to give you a chance anyway. And look, it worked out. You should probably thank me." Gasps. Nervous laughter. Emily's face burned red. Ryan gripped her hand under the table. Claire laughed it off as just a joke, but the humiliation was real. Emily had never felt so betrayed. What Claire didn't know was that karma had been quietly working behind the scenes. For weeks leading up to the wedding, she'd been bragging to mutual friends that she might steal the show. She even hinted that Ryan had once flirted with her, a complete lie hoping to stir drama. Word had spread further than she realized, and several of Emily's relatives already viewed her with suspicion. But the real twist came during the reception's big surprise. Emily and Ryan had arranged for a slideshow of their journey together, sweet photos, funny moments, milestones. Unbeknownst to Emily, her brother had also slipped in a few candid shots from the bachelorette party. When the slideshow reached that night, the screen filled with images of Claire in her white sequin dress, clinking glasses, shouting, "I look like a bride." The room erupted in laughter. Guests turned and stared at her knowingly. Claire's face turned crimson, but it didn't stop there. Halfway through the reception, a hotel staff member approached Emily with a strange request. "Excuse me, is Claire the maid of honor? She needs help with her dress." Confused, Emily followed only to find Claire locked in the restroom, her gown completely ruined. Somehow, red wine had spilled across the front, leaving a massive stain that looked impossible to clean. Her bridal gown was destroyed. Later, guests whispered that they'd seen Claire flirting aggressively with one of Ryan's cousins, who finally snapped and accidentally tipped his drink over her. No one could prove it, but no one doubted it either. Claire spent the rest of the night sulking in a dark corner, out of the spotlight she'd tried so hard to steal. Meanwhile, Emily and Ryan danced, laughed, and celebrated, surrounded by genuine love. The next day, photos from the wedding spread across social media. Instead of being remembered as the glowing maid of honor, Claire was remembered as the girl in white who ruined her dress. The comments were brutal. "Who wears white to someone else's wedding? She looks ridiculous standing next to the actual bride. Karma got her good." Within weeks, Claire stopped posting altogether. Mutual friends distanced themselves, embarrassed by her behavior. And though Emily grieved the loss of a friendship she once cherished, she couldn't deny the truth. Karma had done its job. Emily's wedding wasn't perfect, but she realized something important. True friends don't compete with you. They don't sabotage your joy. They lift you up, even when it's not their turn in the spotlight. And when someone tries to take what isn't theirs, karma has a way of giving them exactly what they deserve. Sometimes in front of the entire guest list. The Neighbor from Hel. When Michael and Sarah bought their first home, it felt like a dream come true. After years of saving, They finally had a cozy two-story house in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Denver. The yard had space for a garden. The school district was excellent, and most of the neighbors seemed kind. Most of them. Then there was Tom. Tom lived next door, a man in his late 50s with a permanent scowl etched into his face. From the very first day, he made it clear that he wasn't thrilled about having new neighbors. When Michael introduced himself with a smile and handshake, Tom barely grunted. When Sarah brought over a plate of cookies, he shut the door in her face without a word. At first, Michael and Sarah brushed it off. Some people are just unfriendly, right? But soon, Tom's behavior escalated into something worse. The first issue came with the property line. Michael had put up a small wooden fence to mark their backyard. Nothing fancy, just enough to give their dog, Daisy, a safe place to run. A week later, Tom showed up at their door furious. "That fence is on my property," he snapped. "Move it back 2 feet. Michael, always the peacemaker, double-checked the survey papers. The fence was exactly where it should be. Still, he offered to walk the property line with Tom, but Tom refused. Instead, he filed a formal complaint with the homeowners association. The HOA sided with Michael, but Tom wasn't done. Next came the noise complaints. Michael and Sarah were quiet people. They didn't throw parties or blast music. But Tom filed repeated complaints, claiming their dog barked all night. She didn't, and that Michael's lawnmower was too loud. It wasn't. The harassment spread beyond complaints. When Sarah planted flowers along the driveway, she found them mysteriously trampled the next morning. Michael's car was keyed twice while parked in front of their house. Packages began disappearing from their porch, and though they couldn't prove it, Michael had seen Tom lurking near the mailbox more than once. The final straw came one evening in July. Sarah had just finished setting up a small backyard barbecue with a few friends when Tom stormed over, red-faced and shouting, "You can't have gatherings like this. This is a quiet neighborhood." Sarah tried to explain it was just 6 people, but Tom wouldn't listen. He called the police, claiming they were hosting a wild party. When the officers arrived, they quickly saw nothing illegal was happening. But the humiliation of having cops show up in front of their friends stung deeply. Sarah went inside and cried. That night, Michael decided enough was enough. He wasn't going to confront Tom directly. That never worked. Instead, he started documenting everything. He installed security cameras around the property, carefully angled to capture their yard, driveway, and front porch. He logged every incident in a notebook, dates, times, and what happened. And then he waited. Karma doesn't always come quickly, but when it does, it hits hard. One evening in early September, Michael and Sarah were inside when their doorbell camera alerted them. Michael checked his phone and saw Tom creeping up their porch, a package in his hands. The video clearly showed Tom stealing it, stuffing it under his jacket, and waddling back to his house. Michael's jaw dropped. Finally, undeniable proof. The next day, Michael filed a police report and handed over the footage. Within 48 hours, Tom was arrested for theft. But the real kicker? When the police searched his house, they found dozens of packages belonging to neighbors up and down the street. For years, Tom had been stealing deliveries, and now, thanks to Michael's patience, he was caught red-handed. The neighborhood erupted. People who had once ignored Michael and Sarah now came by to thank them. "We wondered what happened to all our missing deliveries," one woman said. "Turns out it was him the whole time." Tom was fined heavily, forced to pay restitution, and placed on probation. His reputation was destroyed. Neighbors who once tolerated him now crossed the street to avoid him. But karma wasn't finished. Remember those false complaints Tom filed with the HOA? Well, after his arrest, the association reviewed his record. They discovered he had violated several rules. Himself unauthorized construction in his backyard, failure to maintain his lawn, and even improper disposal of hazardous materials. He was hit with thousands of dollars in fines. Within a year, Tom's house was put up for sale. He couldn't afford the penalties, and no one wanted to live next to him anyway. By the next summer, he was gone. Michael and Sarah didn't celebrate loudly. They didn't throw a party or boast about what had happened. Instead, they quietly enjoyed their backyard barbecue, this time without interruption. They laughed with friends, grilled burgers, and watched Daisy run happily across the grass. The nightmare neighbor was gone, and peace had returned. Sometimes karma doesn't need you to fight back. Sometimes it just needs you to be patient. Keep your receipts, and let people dig their own graves. For Michael and Sarah, justice didn't come overnight, but when it did, it was sweeter than anything they could have planned. The fake friendship. Friendship is supposed to mean loyalty, support, and trust. But sometimes, the people we think of as friends turn out to be the worst kind of enemies. The ones who smile to your face while stabbing you in the back. This was the painful lesson that Emily learned. Emily was in her late 20s, working as a graphic designer in a bustling city. She was the kind of friend everyone loved to have around, dependable, funny, and always willing to help. So when she met Claire at work, she felt like she had found a kindred spirit. Claire was outgoing, stylish, and seemed genuinely interested in Emily's life. They quickly bonded over coffee breaks, shared lunches, and late-night talks. Soon, Emily was confiding in Claire about her dreams of opening her own design studio someday. Claire encouraged her. "You've got the talent," she'd say. "Honestly, you could outshine half the agencies in this city." It felt good to be seen, to be supported. But behind that support was a darker plan. The first red flag appeared when Emily noticed her ideas at work weren't staying hers for long. She would brainstorm concepts for client projects and share them with Claire, only to see Claire present them to their boss as her own. At first, Emily gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they had just thought of the same thing. But when it kept happening, when Emily's words and sketches showed up in Claire's presentations, she started to feel the sting of betrayal. Still, Emily stayed quiet. She didn't want to create drama. She wanted to believe the best about her friend. The real knife in the back came when Emily finally took the leap and started preparing her own business. She spent months planning, creating a portfolio, and lining up a few small clients on the side. She told Claire everything: her branding ideas, her strategies, even her client list. Then one day, she logged onto social media and nearly dropped her phone. There it was, Claire's big announcement. "Excited to launch my own design studio." The name, almost identical to what Emily had brainstormed. The website, a copycat of Emily's mock-ups. And the clients, two of the same small businesses Emily had been quietly working with. Emily's chest tightened. She had been betrayed in the worst way by the person she trusted most. At first, Emily was devastated. She cried. She raged. She even thought about giving up on her dream entirely. Claire had stolen not just her ideas, but also her confidence. But then Emily remembered something her grandmother used to say: "Don't get mad, get better." So that's exactly what she did. Instead of confronting Claire directly, Emily got to work. She poured her frustration into creating the best design studio she could imagine. She refined her branding, sharpened her portfolio, and networked with professionals outside of Claire's circle. Most importantly, she kept receipts, emails, sketches, drafts, every piece of evidence that proved her ideas were hers long before Claire ever claimed them. At first, progress was slow. Claire seemed to be thriving, bragging about her new clients and posting photos of her success. But behind the polished social media posts, cracks were forming. Because Claire could steal ideas, but she couldn't steal passion. She couldn't steal work ethic. She couldn't steal authenticity. Then, karma stepped in. One of the clients Claire had poached grew frustrated with her sloppy work. They reached out to Emily privately, asking if she was available to take over. Emily was hesitant, but when she showed them her original concepts, far better than what Claire had delivered, they immediately signed on with her. Word spread quickly. One by one, Claire's clients began leaving, drawn to Emily's professionalism and creativity. Within a year, Emily's studio was thriving while Claire's was falling apart. The final blow came when Claire tried to sue Emily, claiming Emily had stolen her business model. But Emily was ready. She handed over the meticulous documentation she had kept, dated sketches, time-stamped emails, original portfolios, all proving that Claire had been the thief from the very beginning. The case was dismissed. Claire not only lost in court, but her reputation was ruined. No one wanted to work with a designer who stole ideas and tried to weaponize them against her former friend. Meanwhile, Emily's business flourished. She hired a small team, opened a studio downtown, and finally lived the dream she had once shared with the wrong person. Years later, when someone asked Emily what had happened with Claire, she smiled calmly and said, "Fake friends always expose themselves. All you have to do is keep working and let karma handle the rest." Emily learned that betrayal can feel like the end of the world, but sometimes it's just the beginning of something better. And Claire? She learned that stealing someone's dream only leads to losing your own. The workplace betrayal. Workplaces are supposed to be about teamwork and collaboration, but sometimes they become battlegrounds of ambition, envy, and betrayal. This is the story of how one man's betrayal at work backfired spectacularly and how karma made sure justice was served. The dream job. Mark was a hardworking, soft-spoken guy in his early 30s. He worked in a marketing firm in Chicago and had spent years climbing the ladder from intern to project manager. He wasn't flashy, but he was talented. His ideas were sharp, his presentations polished, and clients respected him. Everyone at the office liked Mark, everyone, except one person, his colleague, Ryan. Ryan was the opposite of Mark, loud, charming, and always trying to be the center of attention. He craved recognition but lacked the discipline to back it up. Where Mark worked late nights, Ryan cut corners. Where Mark earned praise, Ryan seethed with jealousy. When the company announced a major promotion opportunity, director of marketing, both Mark and Ryan applied. The winner would oversee the entire department, with a big salary increase and major perks. Mark knew it wouldn't be easy, but he felt confident. He had the experience, the results, and the respect of his clients. What he didn't know was that Ryan had a plan, a dirty one. The setup. In the weeks leading up to the decision, Ryan pretended to be Mark's friend. He'd buy him coffee, offered to help with projects, and even complimented his ideas in meetings. But behind the scenes, Ryan was scheming. He started stealing Mark's work, saving copies of his drafts, and presenting them as his own. Worse, he began spreading rumors subtle at first, then more pointed. He told coworkers Mark was overwhelmed, that he was cracking under pressure, even that he had missed deadlines, which Ryan himself had sabotaged by deleting files. The final blow came when Ryan hacked into Mark's presentation for the promotion panel. He altered a key slide, replacing accurate data with false numbers. When Mark presented it to the executives, it looked like he had no idea what he was talking about. Mark was humiliated. The executives looked confused. Ryan smirked. A week later, the announcement came. Ryan had been chosen as the new director of marketing. The fallout for Mark, it was crushing. Years of hard work had been stolen in an instant. He felt betrayed not just by Ryan, but by the company for not seeing through the lies. But instead of exploding in anger, Mark quietly gathered his things. He decided to resign. If the company couldn't recognize his worth, then maybe it wasn't the place for him. What Ryan didn't know was that karma was already on its way. The revenge of karma. After leaving the company, Mark took some time to regroup. He updated his portfolio, polished his resume, and began freelancing. Thanks to his reputation in the industry, clients started reaching out to him directly. Within 6 months, he had built a strong client base and was making more money on his own than he ever had at the firm. Meanwhile, Ryan was struggling. The promotion had given him power, but not the skills to back it up. He botched client relationships, ignored deadlines, and mismanaged his team. The employees who once respected Mark now resented Ryan's arrogance. One of the biggest clients, $1 million account, grew. Fed up with Ryan's incompetence, they demanded a replacement. In desperation, the company reached out to Mark as a consultant, asking if he could help salvage the account. Mark agreed, but only on one condition. He would not work under Ryan. He would work directly with the executives. The executives, desperate to keep the client, agreed. The truth comes out. As Mark began fixing Ryan's mess, the truth started unraveling. Employees quietly came forward, telling executives about the sabotage, the stolen work, and the rumors Ryan had spread. One IT worker even produced digital logs proving Ryan had tampered with Mark's files before his big presentation. The executives were horrified. Not only had they promoted the wrong man, but they had lost a valuable employee because of him. It didn't take long before Ryan was called into a meeting. This time, there was no smirk on his face. He was confronted with evidence of his lies, his sabotage, and his incompetence. Within a week, Ryan was fired. Not just fired, blacklisted. Word spread quickly in the marketing community, and no respectable agency would touch him. His career was over. A new beginning. Mark, on the other hand, thrived. The executives begged him to come back, even offering him Ryan's old position. But Mark had moved on. He politely declined, choosing instead to expand his own consulting firm. In less than 2 years, he was running a successful business with a small team, handling clients worth millions. When asked about Ryan, Mark would simply smile and say, "Some people think betrayal gives them power, but the truth always comes out. That's how karma works." The lesson: workplace betrayal can feel devastating. It can rob you of opportunities, confidence, and trust. But in the long run, lies have a way of exposing themselves. Sabotage may win in the short term, but karma never loses. Ryan thought he had stolen a promotion. What he really stole was his own future. And Mark, he learned that walking away isn't the end. Sometimes it's the first step toward building something even better.